Hi everyone, welcome to the Whimsy Stamps channel. This is Donna, and today I'm doing a little bit of watercoloring using the newly released Snowy River Rubber Cling stamp set. Now there is a product reveal video for this stamp, and I will link that in the card up above. So this video is kind of all coloring, and to save a little bit of time in this video, I've stamped out the image onto a piece of Arches cold press watercolor paper. I've used VersaFine Onyx black ink. And now, because this is watercolor paper, it did take several tries to get a good impression. I've also taped down my card to a cutting board just to help minimize any warping while I color. And then I'm starting this card using some watercolor pencils that I got as an early Christmas present from Santa. And then here I've just traced a circle using a circle die, and I'm going around the circle with a light blue pencil, or the watercolor pencil. Now I apologize, I did not keep track of the colors that I used, but I think any light shade would work for this. I am using just a regular brush, and I have a cup of clean water off to the side. And then I'm just starting to blend out the watercolor pencil marks I just added. I'm taking some time to do this to kind of keep the circle unified, I guess, or circular, so that I don't lose that shape. So I did skip all of the coloring of the background, and I'll be honest with you, the coloring of this background with watercolor pencils is honestly a mistake. I've kind of discovered that the watercolor pencils are great for fine detail work, but for a background it just becomes challenging to maintain the smoothness of the coloring between one shade and the next. So this is the first layer using only watercolor pencils, and I'm going to go back and fix that here in just a little bit by going over the background using my watercolors, which I have them off to the side. But first I'm going to work a little bit on that detail work on that big evergreen tree, and I'm just adding a little bit of shading with a green watercolor pencil after I've wet the area with a small amount of water first. And then I'm going in to color in the water. Again, I'm just adding a little bit of water first, and then using my pencil to add the watercolor and then blending it out. Now, I thought this little stream was just a little too light, so I'm going back again with a darker shade of blue. So at this point, my detail work is all done. I've added some shading to the evergreen trees or tree. I've colored in those boulders with just a touch of gray, and then I've added some color into that stream, and I've added some shading to the snowbanks. For the background, I'm using a much bigger brush, which was half of my problem the first time around, and I'm also going in with a wet on wet technique, which is where you wet the paper first with some clean water, then you bring in your watercolor paint. So I wet the paper first, and then I bring in the watercolor paper, and each time I'm adding just a little bit less just to keep blending out the smoothness. I continue going over the entire background with the watercolors off to the side, and my colors don't quite match to the first set of watercolor pencils that I used, but that's okay. I think I'm still achieving the look that I want. Now when I get close to that moon, I don't add any more watercolor. I just kind of blend out and smooth out the transition lines with a clean brush. Once my panel is complete, I set it off to the side to air dry, and I'm going to work on the sentiment. I'm picking out the sentiment from the Simple Sentiment Strips clear stamp set, and I thought I would add in a couple of those little deers from this stamp set or die set, but I do change my mind in the end. Now, since this is a winter nighttime scene, there's just no way that there wouldn't be any glistening snow. So I'm taking some liquid glue with the precision tip, and I've added the liquid glue to the part of the tree where it looks like there would be snow. And I've also added some of the liquid adhesive to the snowbanks, kind of that is surrounding the river. And then I'm taking some fine glitter and I'm just going to sprinkle it on there. And I have to tell you, I love the way the snow came out. There's just so much dimension and there's so much glitter. I think old Saint Nick might spot this Christmas tree a mile away. So anyway, you do want to be sure that your panel is completely dry before adding any glitter. You could even add a little bit of anti-static powder just to make sure there's no static. And then one tip I can share with you with watercolored panels, what I typically do is once it air dries, I do run it through my laminating machine several times. And the heat and the pressure from the laminating machine kind of acts like an iron and flattens out the panel, but it also ensures that it is completely dry. Anyway, the very last thing that I do is I'm adding some snow to my nighttime scene with a paint pen. I've added some small snowflakes, some large ones, just kind of mixed it all up so that it looks random and organic. I have my sentiment strip that I've heat embossed onto black cardstock, and I've trimmed it down using my trimmer and adding a fishtail banner to one end, and then I've popped it up onto foam adhesive and added it across my panel. And then finally I've popped up the entire panel onto some fun foam, and then I'm adding it to a A2 card base. And of course we're just going to add a little more glitter for good measure to those snowbanks using the Spectrum Noir glitter overlay pen. I want to thank you for joining me today and watching this video. If you found it helpful, hit that like button and subscribe to the Whimsy Stamps channel for a ton of inspiration from the other design team members. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you have a fantastic week.